Oh, gosh, as it turns out, the Indianapolis Colts are not about to go 17-0. 16-1 still on the table, but 17-0, the dream is dead because, as it turns out, the Indianapolis Colts just lost a football game. Now, I, of course, assume you've heard that by now. I couldn't possibly be breaking news to you by saying that the Colts lost yesterday to the Rams 27-20 in what was really a competitive game, right? Like, I would imagine that if you were a fan of any of the other 31 teams in the NFL outside of the Indianapolis Colts, you probably had a whole lot of fun watching that game because it was a fun game to watch. And if you're a Colts fan, even in a loss, you do have to feel pretty good about where the Colts stand because they didn't exactly play their best game of football, and they were still in that game with the Rams all the way till the end, right? Like, there were a lot of things from the Indianapolis Colts that I liked in this game. But of course, there were a number of things I didn't like as well, primarily the fact that you can really argue that this team beat itself against the Rams yesterday. Now, I know to a Rams fan, that's going to sound like a cope, but also you do kind of look at it and say, well, okay, they committed 11 penalties out there, which of course can't happen on any given day and is really uncharacteristic from what we've seen from this team up to this point. You also had Xavien Howard out there still, who we will absolutely get to during this episode. We all feel exactly the same about what it is that we saw from him. And then, of course, you have the man of the hour. Last but not least, you have Adonai Mitchell. And quite frankly, usually I get into the intro. I'm not even going to waste time getting to this take because I can't risk it getting lost on the back end of this episode because I don't think we agree, right? If I feel this is important, spoiler alert, obviously we're not 100% on the same page right here. Now, I want to make sure that my point doesn't get lost here because my point isn't to let him off the hook for what he did. Let me just make some claims real quick so you know I'm not blind, so you know that we just watched the same exact thing. One, obviously, that was a boneheaded play by Adonai Mitchell on that would-be 75-yard touchdown to somehow fumble that thing out of the back of the end zone, okay? Like, you just can't have that in any given scenario, period. And then on top of it, of course, you have kind of the fact that he lost his cool a little bit throughout the course of the game. There's the clip of him kind of pacing, walking in circles behind the huddle before they're calling the play. So that much I saw, right? And then also, too, in a world where you can blame one player for a loss, which I really don't think is ever the case. Like, I think you have blame to go around here for the Indianapolis Colts in this one. But in a world where you could blame one guy for a loss, Adonai Mitchell is about as good of a candidate as you can ever have to make that claim, okay? We're on the same page. We agree on that stuff, okay? I saw what you saw. Now that I've said that, I hope you can hear the rest of what it is that I'm about to say here. Because, quite frankly, I have seen a whole lot of bullshit coming out of this fan base following this game. Now, some of you don't spend a whole lot of time online outside of maybe listening to someone talk about the team. So to you, it may sound like I'm speaking to some sort of imaginary person. Others of you know exactly where I'm about to go. And then even others of you might even be annoyed with where it is that I'm going. So, and by the way, if you're annoyed by this, by what time it's all said and done, it's likely because I'm talking to you, okay? If you at all, one, suggested after this that the Colts should cut Adonai Mitchell, or two, attacked his character as a result of this play, calling him stupid, a moron, a 1-cent brain, selfish, poor character, not only should you be ashamed of yourself for reacting that way, you should have your rights to talk about the team revoked for at least 24 hours, if not longer, especially, it's one thing if you're just a fan, but especially if you're someone that covers the team. And I won't say names because it is people that cover the team. And I'm not going to say, I want to say the names. I'm not going to say the names. You might know the names. And I just won't do it because, quite frankly, it's rude to do. So if you see it, you know I'm talking to you. And if you don't, well, then this is off into the void, right? Now, let me be clear. If you say the play itself was stupid or it was moronic, that's different. I'm talking about people who directly attacked the person who he was after a play like that. Not only is that classless, not only is that lazy, but it's also just so two-faced and underhanded if you're someone that's covering the team. Like to people saying that from the comfort of their own home, I would ask, would you say that to his face? Would you? Would you say, hey, you're a moron, Adonai Mitchell? Is that what you would say? Or would you be nice and friendly? Or would you ask him for a picture and an autograph, right? That's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer it because you and I both know the answer to that question, okay? Let alone the fact, by the way, in saying all of this, that if he had just made it another 2 feet, which he did not, I understand this. I know what happened. I admitted what happened. You'd be praising him after a play like that, like he was the second coming of Jerry Rice. I mean, before he fumbled that thing out of the end zone, that play was absolutely sensational. Like, people are talking about him costing the Colts 14 points, which of course there's a level of truth to, but 7 of those 14 points were a catch and run of his doing, right? Like, it's not like that was some sort of gimme touchdown, right? He was literally making what probably would have been the play of the year for the Indianapolis Colts up to that point, okay? Now, I'm not saying he should be free of criticism after doing that, okay? But what I am saying is there's a difference in, for example, right? If I were to look at you and I were to say, dude, you're an asshole, versus saying, you're being an asshole right now. Do you see how, while both of those are a little bit harsh for sure, one of them is a direct attack on someone's character, and the other is more of a criticism, if a harsh criticism, but a criticism nonetheless. So to make it as if insulting him, right? And this is the sentiment I'm seeing, right? Because I already shared this opinion on X, and people are like, you're just going to let him off the hook? No. But to make it like directly insulting Adonai Mitchell is some form of accountability or constructive criticism is a fundamental misunderstanding of what it is that those terms mean. And mind you, these are the same fans, the same members of Colts media who, again, whose names I will not say, but gosh, I want to say them so bad. So bad I want to say them. These are the same people that trashed Daniel Jones all offseason, calling him trash, saying he had no chance to be a quarterback. They ended up looking like fools. They're the same people who wanted Alec Pierce out of town in his second year before ultimately he turned things around. But they said there's no way. He's trash. He's got to go. These are the same people calling Latu a bust after this week, after last week, and then this week watching him play a great game. Like, all this talk about accountability from the Colts organization. At what point do you hold yourself accountable and say, perhaps I'm being a little bit rash in my judgments. Perhaps I should be a little bit more careful than to say something like the Colts need to cut Adonai Mitchell or Adonai Mitchell is a bust. Like, how many times do you need to be wrong for the same exact fucking reason, which is overreacting and leading with negativity in a moment where you should probably lead with a little bit of grace and have a little bit of humility within your own opinions and takes, which quite frankly are wrong time and time and time and time again, not because you can't analyze things objectively, but instead you choose not to and you choose to lean into your emotion instead, right? Like, this is a guy who is 22 years old. He's clearly beating himself up over this play. And instead of trying to lift him up because he's on the team that you root for, right? Like, Adonai Mitchell's success ultimately is the success of the Indianapolis Colts. Instead of leaning into that energy, you kick him while he's down. And again, I'm not saying you can't observe the poor play, but as far as vile name calling and overreactions, like, what is enough enough? Like, I am tired of it. I'm tired of it, quite frankly. That's just where I stand. And I'll tell you what, in all fairness, there's a level of bias I have. I've always been an Adonai Mitchell guy. There's no secret. That's no secret to longtime viewers of the show. This is before the Colts even drafted him. Like, he was my favorite player in that draft. I didn't think he was the best player in the draft, but he was a personal favorite of mine in that draft. I genuinely believe that we are going to end up looking back on this game as a coming of age moment for Adonai Mitchell in this league. It's not to say that next week he's going to go off or something like that, but I think the worst of what we've seen from Adonai Mitchell, we just saw it. And in 3 years, when you're in front of him at training camp, asking him to sign your fucking t-shirt, remember what it is that you were saying after this game now. Xavien Howard, on the other hand, I won't have the same level of grace because he won't be here in 3 years. In fact, he probably shouldn't even be here in 3 days. Quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if he's cut by the time I release this episode. So we're going to talk about him now that I've lectured you long enough. We're going to talk about some of the other things from this game I did not like. And then we're going to also talk about some of the things I did like from this game. And there are a number of them. But before we do, you know what it is? I got to introduce the show. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, let's get on watching and enjoying the show. Go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. We're getting pretty close. So if you keep coming back, enjoying the show, perhaps it's your first day here and you're, you're enjoying what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button. Never miss an episode again. Of course, audio listeners, leave a 5-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show and why it is that you're enjoying the show. I would read the reviews if they were there, but quite frankly, we just don't have all that many of them. So if you're listening on the audio version, perhaps today's the day. Of course, be civil in the comment section. You don't know what the person in the other end of the keyboard is going through. I always preach that type of thing over here. I believe they call it Hoosier hospitality. I'm no Indiana native, but I think that's what it is that you guys call it. But without further ado, let's get back into the regular scheduled programming, and let's lead a little bit more into the negativity, and let's talk about Xavien Howard, because, gosh, that poor bastard. I mean, there's part of me that's watching him, and I mean this genuinely. Like, it's going to sound like a joke. I'm dead serious. I genuinely believe that Xavien Howard would like the Indianapolis Colts to cut him. Like, there's part of me, I picture them bringing him into the office and letting him know that they're relieving him of his duties, and like him looking at them and saying, "Oh, thank goodness, what took you so long? I'm struggling so bad out here. I don't even want to step on the field anymore." Like, is that bad? I really thought there was a chance that Xavien Howard, we would get the news on television that he retired at halftime like Vontae Davis. I mean, it was that poor of a performance from him. And the reason I feel so comfortable saying cut Xavien Howard versus an Adonai Mitchell, for example, it should be self-explanatory, but I'll explain it anyway. Xavien Howard is a guy whose prime we've already seen, and he's clearly past it. Adonai Mitchell, you would argue, is nowhere close to his prime up to this point. And even if you're wrong about an Adonai Mitchell, selling him right now is like selling a stock at its lows. Like, you already took all the losses. Like, to cut bait with him now, your risk to reward is off, right? Like, it could only get better from here, quite frankly, if you're Adonai Mitchell, as opposed to, again, Xavien Howard, which is just awful. But I digress entirely on the Adonai Mitchell point. We're done there. I've spent enough time. I'm sitting here watching this game from the Indianapolis Colts, and particularly out of Xavien Howard. And the only thing I'm thinking, well, really, I guess I'm thinking two things, but the main thing I'm thinking is, can Jonathan Edwards really be that much worse? I mean, I think he only got 3 snaps in this game. If you were to put Jonathan Edwards out there on Puka Nacua, you're telling me he's going to allow more than 170 yards? Like, you're telling me he's going to play that bad? Because, listen, people could say that Howard should have never been on Puka Nacua, but the other option, right? Like, if he was on Devontae Adams, then we would have just been having this conversation about him, right? So there were really no good outcomes for the Indianapolis Colts with Xavien Howard in this game, as we expected, by the way, other than for him to not be on the damn team or not be on the damn field at the very minimum. And again, if you're Lou, I understand that Xavien Howard has more experience in your system, but that only goes so far. At some point, you need a guy who can keep up with these dudes, and at least Jonathan Edwards represents someone that's younger. It still has the physical tools, and quite frankly, in preseason was excellent. I made a stop. He had played 3 snaps in this game, and one of them was a crucial 3rd down stop. So I don't know. I mean, if I'm the Colts right now, Xavien Howard, I'm not even sure if I could bear to look at him in practice this week if I'm the Indianapolis Colts. Like, it's that bad. I mean, Jalen Jones, you want to talk about a guy that we need back in a big way? He's the one. What is it? It's just a hamstring, right? I'm willing to donate both of my hamstrings to Jalen Jones, quite frankly. My days of playing football are long gone. He can have both my hamstrings. Take him. Something has to be done. If that's what it takes to get Xavien Howard off the field, I'm willing to do it. Come in, pull out the knife, rip my hamstrings right off, give them directly to Jalen Jones, okay? I mean, Howard was just attacked all day. Like, I could go on and on and on. But 9 targets, 7 catches allowed, over 100 yards. It was brutal. So that's that, right? Some other negative notes before we ultimately get into the positivity of the episode. I thought the Colts got away from the run in the first half of this game. Now, that isn't something ultimately that is new to them on the season. Like, they've surprised me week after week after week with how often they pass early in games. And they've generally kind of been a team that sort of leans into the running game in the second half of the game. And it's worked out well for them, obviously, up to this point. But I do in this game feel, and in multiple games, quite frankly, feel like they could have potentially been more efficient and potentially scored another time in the first half if they had just been a little more balanced on the offensive side of the ball. Like there's just a couple times I thought you're making this a little bit more difficult on Daniel Jones than it has to be. Of course, again, that hasn't been the case this year. I've thought they've done the opposite. I've thought they've made it very easy on Jones, or as easy as they can. He's still got to go out there and play NFL quarterback. But right, because Anthony Richardson, they tried to make it just as easy on him, and it didn't work out that way. But this game, I thought they made it a little difficult on Daniel Jones in the first half. I think if they had run the ball more, it would have been a little bit different. And then speak of Daniel Jones, he didn't look all that great throwing the football down the field in this game. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think he played well enough to win this game, but this was definitely his worst game of the season by far. And there were a number of interceptable footballs down the field, if my memory serves me correct. Other than that, though, and obviously the penalties, as I mentioned, this really was just a game where the Colts lost. I mean, sometimes you just lose the game. You have one winner and one loser, and then sometimes you tie on the road against a very good Rams team with one of the best wide receiver tandems in football while being down a number of corners, and they were still damn close to winning. So I don't think there's much more to this loss than that. I expect the Colts to be just fine. So let's get into some of the positives and why I feel that way. One, Laiatu Latu. Oh, dear. I mean, he was awesome in this game. And as I mentioned at the top of the show briefly, after a week where he felt where we felt, did I say he or we? Doesn't matter. After a week where we as a fan base kind of collectively felt that he blended in a little bit, right? He popped off the screen the moment this game started. Like from the very first play, I could not take my eyes off of Laiatu Latu. I mean, he was excellent. Ends up with 9 pressures, gets his first sack, and it seemed, at least, I don't have the snap counts or anything like that, that he was on the field way more in this one than he was last week. And I would argue you could even put him on the field more, especially if it means having Ebelcom on the field less, who has not been good at all for the Indianapolis Colts up to this point. But that's a discussion for another day. This is probably the first time that I have watched Laiatu Latu in his career, and I was like, oh shit, that's a game breaker. That's a game wrecker. That's a guy who can literally take over an entire game. He looked like that type of player in this game, and he did do that for a lot of this game. And if this is a sign of things to come, if that's the trajectory that he's on right now, he's going to have some big games down the stretch for this team as the season goes on. Remember, a lot of guys on this defense were singing his praises in the offseason, in training camp. So they saw something from him in those practices for sure. Nice to see it come to fruition in really an important game like this. Like this was a big time game for him to show up the way he did. He was awesome. Next, Mike Hilton, in relief of Kenny Moore, ends up easily leading in reps out of the slot. I think he could have looked much worse. Keep in mind, this is a guy who just got signed in the middle of last week. I thought he made some decent plays in this game. He certainly was nowhere near as bad as Xavien Howard, who's already been on the roster for a little bit of time. So I was actually pleasantly surprised with what Mike Hilton brought to the table in this one. And I don't know how long he's going to be in for Kenny Moore, but I'm kind of curious what his role will be once Kenny Moore is back, because Hilton's obviously a slot specialist, and you certainly don't want to use him anywhere else. But at the same time, I thought he tackled well in this game. Like, I just thought he had some good moments. Like, when I was seeing Mike Hilton, a lot of the times it's because I thought he was doing something good, not because I thought he was doing something bad. I would have to go back and watch the tape, and maybe there were times where he got burned, but I didn't see the Rams take advantage of it all that often if it happened. So good on Mike Hilton. And then to stick on the defensive side of the ball, which, again, I thought the defense played admirably, given the circumstances. And Lou Anarumo, I thought, showed some real interesting wrinkles to the defense in this one. You know, one thing we spoke about coming into the week was how hard it was going to be to confuse Matt Stafford. And there was a play early in this game that was just an awesome call by Lou Anarumo, right? You had like Zaire Franklin showing blitz pre-snap, and then when the ball was snapped, he came like a bat out of hell and then just engaged with the center. And then after, I don't know, like a second or two, he just dropped back into coverage and ended up exactly where it was that Stafford was throwing it to, over the middle of field. I mean, that was an awesome way to create a level of unpredictability if you're Lou Anarumo, right? Because what's the scouting report on Zaire, right? Everything we know about Zaire Franklin. If he's showing blitz and then he goes to start the blitz and engages with the center, he's coming for you, right? Like there's no other scenario other than the fact that he's coming for you and he's coming for you right. Hey, yo, pause, right? So to see him drop back in that moment, I thought from Lou, that was kind of a nice little, it obviously confused Matt Stafford. Stafford didn't expect that. Was what it was. Also, there was an adjustment that they made coming out of the half that I actually didn't see anyone talking about, and it was on the defensive front. They struggled a little bit to stop the run in the first half of this game, and then they come out to start the second half of the game with 3 defensive tackles, right? As opposed to going Grover and Buckner on the inside and then having your defensive ends on the outside, which would be typical. They came out with Grover in the middle, and then Neville Gallimore and DeForest Buckner kind of playing as defensive ends on the outside. And other than the first play in that formation, it worked pretty damn well. And, particularly with DeForest Buckner, I mean, he's a hell of a football player. And he's quite fast for a defensive tackle. So he kind of fit in really good playing kind of in front of the tackle or outside of the tackle or in between the tackle and the guard, right? I mean, he fit playing in the defensive end situation. I thought in that formation, obviously the Colts assumed they were going to run and they did. So I would not be surprised to see the Colts do a little bit more of that. Perhaps I'll bring it up on film if I'm able to get NFL Plus to work on my computer and give you just a couple of clips on that, because it was a cool formation to see. And it was something we've seen from them up to this point in the season. Would not be surprised to see them go back to that as the season goes on. Another positive, Nick Cross. I mean, he continues. He's playing so good. We've gotten so accustomed to Nick Cross flying around the field, making tackles, and just showing great instincts that we almost don't even talk about it anymore. Like we've just taken it for granted. I mean, he is a dog. And want to talk about another guy that people wrote off too soon. Remember when he hurt Josh Downs last year in preseason, and he ended up with like the ankle injury or whatever, and then everyone's like, you got to fucking cut Nick Cross, that, the next, and then before you know it, Nick Cross is named the starter. And following when he hurt Josh Downs, they were interviewing him, and obviously the media is coming at him hard, and he basically, what he said was something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, but I'll get you close, was, hey, listen, obviously you don't want to hurt a teammate, but we're out here playing football. And it was in that moment where I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, Nick Cross. I kind of like that attitude. And I kind of, in that moment, had a feeling that he was going to be a guy that was going to come out there and give a little bit of the, right? A little bit of the nasty to the Indianapolis Colts. You want that type of attitude out of a guy that has to go out there and make a bunch of tackles. Nick Cross brings that. I thought in this game, he was excellent. I thought he's been excellent all year. And I feel like it deserves a level of recognition. Other positives from this game. We won our Colts parlay of the week. We're now 2 of 3 on those, meaning that I think you're in the money. If you have followed them every week, you must be ahead, because I know I'm ahead. And then also, we're 4 of 4 on game predictions, like predicting the outcomes of the games this year. So far, we have every single week been right. And the good news about that is that I think the Colts are about to go 2-1 in the next 3 games, barring any major injuries, if not 3-0. So I think you're about to see the Colts be 5-2 or 6-1 in short order. Really, that game on the road against the Chargers in a few weeks is the one that I'm looking at as iffy. I think next week we have the the Raiders at home. I think that's a win. And then after that, we have the Cardinals at home. I think that's a win as well. And that's kind of my reaction to the game. Hopefully it was coherent. Hopefully it made sense. Hopefully I didn't lecture you too much, but at the same time, I couldn't help it. So, like, subscribe if you haven't yet. My name is Justin. This right here was the Ride on the Bench Colts podcast. And as always, go Colts.